What happens when a search engine decides it no longer wants to be a directory, but the actual destination? With Google's Gemini integration, the core architecture of the web has fundamentally changed. It is actively swallowing the entire commerce funnel. Let's be incredibly clear right out of the gate. Google isn't just supercharging search. They are constructing a closed ecosystem where they own the intent, the interface, and the transaction, for better or honestly, absolutely for worse. Here is the raw baseline. Google is moving beyond pointing users to external websites. They are integrating Gemini directly into the search interface, routing user intent through the Universal Commerce Protocol. They are allowing native checkouts directly on the search results page, generating dynamic creative assets at scale with Product Studio, and tracking that entire lifecycle inside the unified command center of Google Analytics 360. On one hand, this sounds incredibly sophisticated. By unifying a brand's merchant center data feeds with Google's AI models, you could argue we are finally achieving true, scalable, frictionless commerce. The best ads are no longer ads. They are simply the most accurate, immediate answers to a user's complex query with a checkout button attached. But look at what you are trading for that efficiency. You are systematically surrendering total control of your brand's creative identity, your real-time inventory management, and your attribution models to Google's algorithms. You are trading the temporary sugar high of platform conversions for massive, crippling technical debt. Let's actually map the architecture of how a transaction works now, because the elegance of the Universal Commerce Protocol is exactly what is so terrifying. Historically, a B2B buyer searching for a highly specific $15,000 industrial laser cutter part clicks a text ad. They wait for the manufacturer's legacy mobile site to load. They navigate some clunky third-party shopping cart, get frustrated by the UI, and they drop off. We all know the old way was full of friction. Now the model shifts. Because the manufacturer's merchant center feed is deeply integrated into Google's ecosystem, Gemini synthesizes an immediate, context-aware answer about that specific laser part's thermal tolerance. The interaction happens where the intent is highest. The buyer uses native checkout right inside that search interface. They never even have to leave the Google page. They buy the industrial part in 2 clicks. The brand gets the instant ROI. The user gets the part they desperately need for their assembly line, and the data flows back into the brand's CRM. It sounds like a frictionless digital superhighway. But is it really a superhighway, or is it a toll booth where Google is aggressively managing the gates? Let's look at the actual technical breaking points of this system. The APIs processing these transactions are incredibly robust, right up until you hit the latency bottleneck. Imagine a high-volume, high-stakes environment. A specialized B2B supplier running a massive end-of-quarter flash sale on heavily discounted, high-demand servo motors. You have a native checkout sitting on Google's highly optimized, globally distributed servers, but that checkout interface relies on an automated feed to your brand's proprietary legacy inventory database to know exactly what is in stock. This is exactly why the protocol demands rich, accurate feeds. Legacy ERP systems process inventory sequentially. They lock the row in the database while a transaction clears to prevent double spending. So, Google's front-end AI is processing hundreds of user queries in milliseconds through the Universal Commerce Protocol, but the brand's back-end SQL database locks for even 2 seconds per transaction. That creates a small queue, which instantly cascades into massive API latency. What happens? Google's native system processes 500 orders at the speed of light, but the kitchen's pantry is only updating every few minutes. Google effortlessly processes native checkouts for 300 out-of-stock servo motors. That is a catastrophic customer service disaster, entirely manufactured by the disconnect between Google's AI speed and the brand's physical reality. And who cleans it up? The brand. The brand has to manually email 300 angry procurement managers to cancel their critical orders, taking a massive reputational hit. You could argue that API latency is a solvable engineering hurdle. The entire point of the Universal Commerce Protocol is to act as a forcing function, forcing the industry to upgrade its legacy infrastructure from batch XML uploads to real-time WebSockets, which are essentially open, continuous data connections. but it still actively prioritizes front-end velocity over back-end reality. Fine, let's assume the brand spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade their ERP to real-time WebSockets. You have seamless checkout and frictionless APIs, but it is all completely useless if the automated creative driving that initial intent is hallucinated garbage. This brings us to Product Studio, the tool meant to solve the creative bottleneck. Creative execution is the #1 driver for performance. Historically, only massive enterprise brands with multi-million-dollar agency budgets could afford to iterate visual formats at scale. Product Studio, built directly into the ecosystem, fundamentally changes the math by utilizing diffusion models. For context, diffusion models are generative AI systems that understand pixel-level optimization to build and modify incredibly realistic images from scratch. Here's how it works. A mid-sized medical device manufacturer wants to launch a new portable ultrasound machine. In the old world, they had one static hero image from an expensive photo shoot. Now, using Product Studio, the AI maps the 3D geometry of that ultrasound machine. It estimates ambient light and generates 50 hyper-localized, natively aspect ratioed video and display assets. It places the device in a dynamically lit, realistic clinical environment. Suddenly, this mid-sized company is driving simultaneous awareness and sales across YouTube demand gen, competing with global enterprise budgets literally overnight. But here is where it gets dangerous. Generative AI models do not understand the subtle, rigid constraints of corporate brand safety. They lack contextual awareness entirely. Yes, they are trained on billions of data points of high-converting visuals, but high-converting does not mean brand compliant. If that medical device manufacturer lets Product Studio auto-generate their seasonal assets, the AI maps the geometry and places it in a realistic clinical environment. But the diffusion model hallucinates. It renders a non-sterile element into the background, maybe a coffee cup on the operating table, or a bizarre, unnatural shadow across a biohazard bin. Or worse, it actively pulls in an aesthetic color motif that directly mimics their biggest competitor, because the AI associates that specific blue palette with high-engagement medical tech. You might think the marketer is still in the loop before pushing a campaign live, but when you pair Product Studio directly with the automated bidding algorithms of YouTube demand gen, the machine is explicitly designed to minimize human intervention. The pitch is scale and velocity. The machine takes that flawed, non-compliant, hallucinated asset and blasts it across the internet before a human media buyer or legal compliance officer can even intervene. You end up burning critical ad spend on low-intent inventory, pushing a compromised visual identity, and risking massive regulatory fines. The default settings absolutely encourage recklessness, pushing marketers to just click auto-apply to find efficiency. If you think the machine is blindly burning spend, you have to look at the measurement architecture underpinning this. Google Analytics 360 and Google's offline CRM integration. This is supposed to completely solve the black box attribution problem using deterministic data, meaning actual recorded customer actions, not just educated guesses. Let's look at the mechanics of hashing. GA360 isn't guessing based on probabilistic cookies anymore. It takes the encrypted email address of a closed enterprise lead in Salesforce, hashes it using SHA-256 protocols, a way to securely encrypt data so it can be matched without exposing the raw information, and retroactively matches it to the authenticated Google profile that watched the YouTube demand gen ad 90 days prior. Let's say a B2B SaaS company selling procurement software has a 9-month sales cycle. Without this integration, they might look at their data and assume a direct search click yesterday closed a $2 million deal. But with GA360 mapping the hashed data, they see the true sequence of events. They objectively realize that a top-of-funnel YouTube campaign from 3 months ago was the actual catalyst. They can finally prove the value of their media spend and invest with absolute confidence. That sounds flawless in a perfectly clean, theoretical vacuum where data never degrades. But the harsh reality of unified AI attribution is that the models processing offline CRM data inside GA360 inherently favor Google's own inventory. The machine routinely conflates correlation with causation. Consider a realistic scenario. A media agency hooks up their client's Salesforce CRM to GA360. They look at their shiny new automated dashboard and think they are absolute geniuses because the AI claims YouTube Demand Gen drove a 5x return on ad spend for enterprise deals. But when an actual data scientist manually cross-references the raw offline CRM timestamps with the media delivery logs, they realize the AI didn't find new customers at all. It aggressively retargeted the brand's existing warm leads, people who were already deep in the Salesforce pipeline, who had already talked to sales reps, and who were going to close anyway. The AI cannibalized organic pipeline, slapped a YouTube ad in front of them right before the contract was signed, and claimed a 5x ROAS. That is a measurement illusion designed to justify more Google ad spend. This is exactly why incrementality testing is so vital. You have to run precise holdout tests, suppressing ads to a specific control group of your CRM list to isolate the true causal lift of the media. But the path to excellence that Google pitches pushes automation over that granular manual control. It takes an army of agency analysts to set up those holdouts and babysit the models to ensure they aren't cannibalizing the pipeline. And yet, the industry results speak volumes. Look at the Google Ads Impact Awards. Hundreds of agencies across the US and Canada submitted complex campaigns utilizing Gemini Search, Product Studio, and Demand Gen, driving incredible business results. These were scrutinized by distinguished third-party judges from the Association of Canadian Advertisers and the Canadian Media Directors Council, objective industry veterans whose mandate is to protect brand budgets. They validated that this technology is driving undeniable impact. But the agencies winning those awards are the ones doing the heavy lifting. They are navigating the black box. They are the data scientists setting up complex holdout tests to prevent attribution illusions. They are the creative directors babysitting the product studio models to ensure the AI doesn't hallucinate non-compliant assets. They are the engineers manually writing scripts to sync the CRM data to prevent native checkout latency disasters. They are acting as the human firewall against the machine's inherent recklessness. They succeed because they lean into the AI transformation, recognizing that the ecosystem is about unprecedented leverage, and it's leverage with a massive price tag. Before we get into the final takeaways, just a reminder that you can find more insights like this and stay ahead of the curve at ainuku.com. AI news you can use. So what are the key takeaways and actionable AI insights from all of this? The infrastructure is transforming. The scale of the data processing is powerful, but you must protect the fundamental sovereignty of your business. If you just hand the keys over to the machine, you are flying blind. You need to dive into the architecture. Understand exactly how the Universal Commerce Protocol routes your data payloads by looking at your own API latency logs. Audit your automated creative assets before they go live. Do not trust diffusion models to understand your brand guidelines. And above all, question every single automated ROAS dashboard you see until you have run a deterministic holdout test. Check out Google's AI Essentials if you need the baseline, but you have to do the manual work. And that's your daily dose of AI know-how from ainuku.com, AI news you can use.